She
happy.
says he swells up like a teen's peen after a porn video.
I I loved that.
Yes, I loved
Yeah,
it too.
and her using the word "peen"
Mm.
kind of tells you what the spice level is. Welcome to Morally Gray Babes. We're your hosts, Jen and Amber, two unapologetic book addicts diving deep into the steamiest reads, hottest book boyfriends, and those spicy moments that make you blush.
Amber here, and we're not just here to talk plot twists and character arcs. We're breaking down everything from our favorite quotes to the spice levels that really bring the heat.
Expect a lot of laughs, a little cussing, and some seriously hot takes. Whether we're gushing over fictional men or dishing out the truth on what books deserve the hype, nothing is off limits.
So buckle up, Buttercup, and get ready for real, raw, and totally unfiltered book talk. Because we're the book besties you didn't know you needed.
Hello, Morally Gray Babes. We're so glad to see you. This is Jen. We've got Amber here. And today we are going to be talking about Billionaire Grump, a fake relationship romantic comedy. It's a rom-com billionaire standalones, and there are 4 books in this sort of rom-com billionaire standalone. It's by Mischa Bell. It's the last book, basically, that I've listened to on Audible because whenever I listen on Audible, I'm just listening and I don't take notes. I'll have thoughts because I always have thoughts, but I will not be having any quotes or anything like that, just as a heads
And
up.
that's okay because when I say the quote, I know you'll have thoughts because they're so funny to me. So it starts off with Juno. When I'm late for a job interview and get stuck on an elevator with an annoyingly sexy, ancient Rome obsessed grump, the last thing I expect is for him to be the billionaire of the building. I also don't expect to almost kill him. Accidentally, of course. Sure, I don't get the plant care position I applied for, but I do receive an interesting offer. Lucius needs to trick the public and his grandma into thinking he's in a relationship, and I need tuition money to get my botany degree. Our arrangement is mutually beneficial. That is, until I start catching feelings. If being a cactus lover has taught me anything, it's that if you get too close, there's a good chance you'll end up hurt. Lucius. Post elevator incident. I'm left with 3 things: my favorite water bottle full of pee, a life threatening allergic reaction, and paparazzi photos of my girlfriend. And I make my gram the happiest woman alive. Naturally, my next step is to blackmail this immediately cute girl to pretend to date me. That way, my grandma stays happy, and as a bonus, I can keep the gold diggers at bay. Unfortunately, my arch nemesis, aka biology, kicks in, and the whole not getting physical part of our agreement becomes increasingly hard to abide by. Worse yet, the longer I'm with Juno, the more my delicately crafted, icy exterior melts away. If I'm not careful, Juno will tear down my walls completely.
I will say billionaire books are my thing. I didn't realize, but honestly, every time I say something like, "Oh, billionaire," she goes, "I know, that's what you like." And I was like, "Oh, yeah."
Whenever I see billionaire or vampire, I'm like, Jen's gonna like this.
Yeah. Yeah, and we will warn you in advance too that this book is not sort of the typical books that we love to read, in that this is really more of a rom-com than a dark romance. But we did read it and we liked it, so we want to share it. The other thing I would say is, I don't know about you, but when I was listening to this book, I didn't like the voice that they picked for him, so it made it harder for me to really like him, which again is another reason why I'm only going to be reading Kindle because I have a better imagination, I guess. But also, I could totally picture this being a movie. Could you?
I felt like a movie. And the one thing about like rom-coms to me, and I should say I like any type of book out there unless it makes me cry. I don't like to cry. I don't want to cry in a book. I don't want to cry in a movie.
Amen.
So if you're looking for a tearjerker,
You will never
no,
find those books on this podcast.
those are not for me.
Love you, Nicholas Sparks, but we're not going to be reading books on this
Girl, I
podcast.
do not want to cry in a book. So for me, whenever I read like these romantic comedies, it's usually one person that is super quirky and then the and awkward, which I can totally relate to because I find myself quirky. And then there's one person who is kind of like the stoic figure and more put together. And in this book, I felt like they were both
Yes.
awkward in their own right, and it was so delicious for me. So
Yes.
this book to me, and this is gonna be kind of like a different way that we're talking about a book because you read it, and I'm just gonna share my thoughts, but I felt this was a super fun, easy to read romantic comedy. It was about a quirky billionaire whose peculiar interests, outside the bedroom, of course, made it challenging for him to fall in love or accept others to love him. And then you had this female main character who is just as quirky with her own peculiar interests, and she had a challenging time finding her love herself. So I thoroughly enjoyed this book, but there was just for me, there was a lot of questions left unanswered with their story, right?
Yes. Yes. I almost feel like a bunch of characters were like introduced, but it was like why? Because they didn't go deeper into it. So I felt like it wasn't complete. But again, they're standalones, but it's a 4-book series. So maybe we'll be interacting with some of these characters in the other books. I don't
Maybe.
know.
I don't know if they're interconnected, right? So for me, it's like you get glimpses of these characters and you get glimpses of their past, but there wasn't really any depth to them. So
Mhm.
I feel like we could have gotten more enjoyment, more character development if there was more history, more meat to these people. And I'll share with you some of them in a second. However, if this is going to be like a quick rom-com read, it was perfect, right?
And what do we call those in
I call
between
them palate
the books that we
cleansers,
read?
like little fluffy.
Palate cleansers, fluffy books that are an easy read and enjoyable and go in between those darker books. I think they're exactly
So if you
perfect.
want a book to read for the week during your lunch hour break, I feel like this is perfect, right? It's
Totally.
really cute. I thought it was really cute. But like for instance, Lucius's mother's backstory and their relationship, as well as incidences which happen in high school with certain girls or girlfriends. It was mentioned briefly, but it felt like these areas could have been elaborated on to make more depth of his character. And I felt like
Yes.
the same could have been said with the female main character, who it said, oh my god, this is the part that I was like, what is happening? Because it says she was dumped like 11 months before their interaction, right, with this Roman god.
Mhm.
And the ex was briefly engaged and their relationship was glanced over. It felt like there was no meat to how it affected her besides simply
Right.
being hurt. And I wish they could have showcased more of her feelings and thoughts on that relationship.
Typical rom-com to have a breakup and it's only been 11 months
She's
and
engaged and
the
married.
ex is engaged, married, pregnant. I mean, I don't even know if it was pregnant, but I'm just saying like that's like your typical rom-com, I
Yeah, it
think.
was just kinda like she was just like, "There's my ex, and there's his new and improved wife," and I was like, "Wait, what happened? It's been 11 months." Like, I can't believe
And and she supported him through medical school, and then he dumped
in
her
residency.
and married this younger, wealthy heiress type of person. So, yeah, very rom-com, very
Yes.
rom-com.
One of the other things about the book that I was just kinda like, "What is happening?" was that this is a work and routine obsessed, quirky billionaire, right? And he
Oh, yes.
traveled to this new location, we're not gonna talk about it, for a business venture. However, it never mentioned once his routines or contacting his right-hand assistant who played a vital role in, like, some of the later chapters. And I was like, "Where is she in the whole book?" Like, it glimpsed her very beginning and then right at the end, and then nothing. And I was like, it would have been good to see just like little breadcrumbs of her trying to contact him, trying to interact with him, just for me.
I will also say that what I loved about this book is that it, like, opens pretty quickly and they meet pretty quickly in the very first maybe first or second chapter,
Yeah.
and they talk about it on the book cover, right? So they're in an elevator, and they're in an elevator for a number of chapters,
Oh,
I
yeah, at
think,
least
right?
8 because I read
Now, let me just tell you, I laughed my
it
butt
was so
off.
good.
Hysterical. Amazing writing,
It could
amazing.
definitely be a movie. It could
Yeah, I pictured a movie.
yes.
So if those are the types of books you love, you want to read this
And
book.
it was she was in the elevator, I wanna say for at least 9 chapters because I was on chapter 8 and I was like, "We're on chapter 8." She's still stuck in the elevator. You're like, "I'm on chapter 8 and this is happening." I'm like, "You're not on chapter 8.
I was not on
Please stop.
chapter 8.
Please stop talking to me."
In Audible, you can't tell very easily what chapter they're
But
in
the
and
first
whatever.
chapter, he's in the elevator and she slides her foot in to stop it, right? And like her nicely pedicured sandal. So he sees her right then. So the things that I thoroughly enjoyed were the snarky mental quirks between the main characters that they had internally. Like I just thought they were so well done. I was chuckling to myself and highlighting them because I wanted to make sure that I shared them with Jen on our little boxing chat that we have going on. But I thought those were hilarious and I can share some of my faves. I also thought it was a nice touch so that he had ferrets, right? So he loved ferrets.
Which seems so out of left field to me.
Again, it has to like he tells why he came about these
Yeah.
ferrets and it made sense.
Mhm.
And she likes cactus. Why?
Cacti?
Cactuses. We're not even we'll talk about that in a second. And so I love the name of his ferrets. I thought they were so well done, well thought out of. I love the part and I wish the authors, and I say authors because I think this is a husband and wife duet. Um,
Oh,
if I remember reading the acknowledgement.
it just says Mischa Bell,
I
but if
I think in the
also
back of the
yeah.
book it says that these are husband and wife author pair,
There
and
you
that's their pen name together. Don't quote me on that, but I really think that's what I read.
but that's
I feel like
cool.
that's what I read, but I wish they would have just dived deeper in a few little things because in one scene they're trying to get to know each other, and so one of the classic questions that you ask somebody is like, "What's your favorite color?" Right? And he says, "My favorite color is honey." And then they keep going to ask him questions. I thought it was kind of weird, like to say honey instead of like golden brown or
And have her not say, "What the heck? What do you mean, honey?" Like, I would be so curious
well,
if
well,
someone said honey is their favorite
her
color.
response was like, honey is so such like a wide range. Like if it's from this nectar is this and it's this nectar. And so he says honey, but then the next chapter he says something about the sparkle in her honey colored eyes. And I was like,
Woo!
like, I just wish there was more mention of the connection besides that
Yeah.
one statement, so you could feel more that love brewing between the two of them. Just for like my romantic heart, I would just want that.
You know what I also loved about this book was that they switched POV every
Mm.
chapter. So they're in the elevator for a number of chapters, and every other chapter was them. So something would happen, and you'd hear her inner dialogue, and then his chapter is next, and they'll go over his inner dialogue during the same time. And I loved that. Now, sometimes it can be irritating, but in this
Oh, I loved it.
situation, it was perfection. It was done very well.
I thought I loved it. I loved the flipping back and forth to get their perspective. Sometimes whenever you're reading a book, especially like a fantasy book, you get the one character like 4 or 5 in a row and you're like, "Come on, give me the juice." So this was really nice for me. There was one thing I found odd. I just found it odd, right? So you had this quirky guy who was like all big on routines, very Roman numeral, loves ancient Rome. We can go into that if you want. But when they described it in the very beginning, they described his hair as a spiky faux hawk Caesar haircut, which I couldn't really picture. So I actually had to Google it because I was like, what the hell is this?
I Google a lot when I read.
So I was just like, I don't see that for this character's hair type. Like it did
Not
not
at all.
fit his person, what I would think his person. Like I
Yeah.
didn't think those two fit well. But then again, most of my male characters resemble some version of Henry Cavill. So I don't know. It's like when she was describing his cheekbones and his jawline and this and that, I was like, oh, this is like Henry Cavill. Okay. And then she was like spiky faux hawk. And I was like, no.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
And then like he disheveled it and then his curls flopped down. I was like, wait, what? Like,
Curls? I thought it was spiky. Yeah. Couldn't picture that.
so, and I don't blame the author. I just blame the fact that that's not what I envisioned.
And well, and that's what you were thinking of when you read it, right? We can never see exactly what the reader is or the writer is writing about. So not everything's going to always line up.
Yes, but I thought this was so cute. One of the quotes. So, like I said, I love the humor that these characters had. I love how the author. Um, so we're just gonna say some. So
Say it.
Juno says, "If glares could kill, I'd be a corpse eaten by a vulture and excreted as guano to serve as fertilizer for industrious cactus."
Like, come on, that is brilliant writing.
And it fit her mentality. Yeah, it fit her
Personality.
personality, it fit
Yes.
her how she thought and processed things. I just thought it was well done.
So I listened to the book, and when I listen on Audible, which I'm not doing anymore, but when I listen on Audible, I get through it very quickly. And so Amber sent a Voxer that said, you know, the plural of cactus is
I was
cacti.
like,
That was literally
that was it. Well, okay, let's just give context. This lady loves plants, all right? She doesn't know
cactus in
yes,
particular.
she loves plants. She says she doesn't know everything about plants, but she knows a lot. And specifically cactus. That is her thing. And so when she talks about them, she says cactuses. And I was taught that it was cacti. And I got so there's like this clip of what is her name? Jennifer, oh gosh, with the dimples. What is her name?
Gardner?
Yes, Gardner.
No.
And she's like snucked on and snooked or something. She's on talk show.
Smacked and sneaked or snuck and
Yeah,
sneaked.
and she's like, not
Something like that, yeah.
snuck, it's sneaked. Someone with your college degree, you should know, right? I had that
Yeah.
Jennifer Gardner moment. Like, she wants to be a botanist. Like, shouldn't she know that it's not cactuses, it's cacti?
And then I'm reading and I see the part where they have this conversation. I'm assuming you have
I
that
don't have a
quote.
quote, but I will pull it up because it was
So basically, she says cactuses, and he says it's cacti. And she says, no, I looked it up and it could be both ways. And I choose to say cactuses. And I was like, first of all, love her personality and her confidence in that moment. And her, you know, using the word that she wants to use. So I cracked up about
yes,
that.
I'm trying to find it, but he was like, yeah, it was just really good. And he gives like all the reasons why it is cacti. And I'm like, yes, yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm agreeing with Lucius. Like, we just gotta stop now. Like, and then I basically was like, okay, Jen, I'm gonna eat my humble pie. It could be both.
I know, because I'm with you. Every time she said it, I said cacti, like correcting her as I'm listening to the book.
Well, I kind of cringed until that chapter because I was like, seriously, come on, come on. And then I stand down. I can't find it, but I will probably put when I find it, add it to the show notes so people can know how wrong I
Perfect.
was. So one
Actually, you were right.
I was right
She
according to
was right,
Lucius.
and you were
I
right.
was right according to Lucius. But one of the other quotes that Juno says is, "What an asshole. I've never hugged a tree in my life. I'm too busy talking to them." Oh, I loved it. I just love their snarky banter and
The banter and sarcasm was
oh
like
my
a level
gosh.
9 in this book, and it made me
She
happy.
says he swells up like a teen's peen after a porn video.
I I loved that.
Yes, I loved it too.
And her using the word peen
Mm.
kind of tells you what the spice level is.
One thing that I did love about the book about the Lucius character was that he was instantly obsessed and possessive of her. And
We love obsession here with the male character to the female character. It is something that we thrive on reading.
I adore it in books.
Yeah, only
Only
in
in
books.
So there's a scene at the restaurant and this male waiter checks out basically Juno, and he was like, no, next. We need somebody else to come in, replace him. And I love how blunt he is because I'm also a very blunt person.
Ditto, ditto, ditto.
So I loved how he stated things. And there's a moment where he is looking at Juno and he says something like, I need to put my napkin over my lap. Otherwise, whew, like, and then she keeps
It'll be a
yeah.
tent or
Well,
something.
he just says, "I had to put my napkin over my lap." Oh my gosh! And then he like stares at her again. And then he looks down and he goes, "The fucking napkin is tinting." I just thought it was so funny. Just like, oh,
And I really, really, because he was I mean, Grumpy Billionaire is like true, like a billionaire grump. That was a great title because he was very grumpy. But I loved his relationship with his mom.
grandma, grandma.
No, his grandmother, forgive me. He would take her call at any time of day, at any point. Like he was a really, really good grandson.
Yes. I loved their relationship. I agree. Dude, I just loved how blunt he was. There was a moment we said earlier about when she runs into her ex at this fundraiser. And the ex was like, "Come on, Juno, give me a hug." And he says something like, I'm a hugger. And Lucius looks at him and just says, "I'm a puncher." He goes, and then he just says, "Are we going to indulge our natures today?" Like,
You know what? I would almost say that his sarcasm and
oh,
bluntness was written very
it was
eloquently.
so
Like,
good.
it was really, really, really
It was
good.
really well done. I just loved his personality, even though he was made out to be this really awkward, quirky, standoffish person. I loved it. I loved everything. The other thing, the last quote that I do have is kind of like at the very end, whenever, because I feel like he fell first and harder than her, and she fell, but it was like really gradual and she was a little timid. So I feel like it was more, he was just like obsessed and didn't realize how much he needed and craved love specifically for her. But she says, "It hadn't hit me until now just how much I don't want whatever it is between us, no matter how fake, to end. I like kissing my human cactus. I like talking on the phone with him and having dinners with him." And I like that because when she says, "I like kissing my human cactus," I was like, oh, he's a little
That's so
prickly.
good.
He is prickly. And then once you get to him, he is juicy and like very sweet in his own way, right?
With her and his grandmother, like, that's probably the only 2
Yeah.
people.
But he was really nice to like his chauffeur butler, right? He
Yes.
was very nice to like he took care of people in his own way, but he protected himself at all costs because of his backstory, which I wish we just got a little bit more.
Yeah, we didn't get enough of that, I would agree with that.
And I would say when reading this book, like I said, like we said, it was like a really quick rom-com, could be a movie. It was so cute. There was mentions of side characters, and I wish that we had more. Like in my mind, I want to know more about grandma and her man, right?
Oh, I loved his comfort, and I don't have the quote, but I love his conversation with, I think it's her bodyguard, the grandma's bodyguard or house person or whatever it is. And I loved the conversation he had after seeing an interaction between those two. And he was like basically saying, take care of her or I'll kill you. But it was real, again, it was very eloquent, and I wish I had that
Blunt
quote.
and well done.
Yes.
And then there was his butler chauffeur. So that guy, I wish there was more of his story because he seems like he would be a really funny character. And then her best friend. For some reason, I wanted those two to end up together. Like
I I
they had
agree. And it could be one of the other
it
books, we don't know.
maybe, but in my mind, it was like they had like the briefest interaction, not even really anything to write home about. But in my mind, I was like, I want them.
You were writing their story.
It's like I want them to have a side love affair. Like anyway, let's see. Let's just go ahead and talk about spice. So this for me, I felt it was about a one chili pepper. There were roughly two sexual scenes mentioned.
It could have been a 0. We're giving it a 1, but it
There
was
was one briefly described as bystanders glancing at side characters while the other was more detailed scene from one of the main characters' point of view. So I would say it's a one, right?
Yeah.
If you want to skip the more detailed scenes, you need to skim over chapters 35, 34, and 35. But
Yeah, the fact that like, the 2 chapters that there's scenes in where which we'll be talking about at some point, I'm sure, one of the Omegaverse ones where I think we had, like, 15 chapters in a row filled with
I would like
scenes.
a 5.
That was a 5. But yeah. Yeah. I would agree with
Yeah.
you. One's
And
accurate.
when I think about like the scale, I feel like ACOTAR, the Court of Mist and Fury, those books are like at a 2 for me. So that just gives people a scale, right? Like this one,
Yes.
it had one real scene with the main characters, and one was just like, oh, I caught someone. But one real scene. And if it's just one real scene, and it wasn't even to me, it wasn't really that detailed.
No, it was like going to the commercial. Like, they show them the next day waking
Well,
up, right? That
it
had
It
that
wasn't
feeling.
completely closed door. Let's just say that, but
Yeah.
it was detailed, but it wasn't fully detailed in my opinion. I would say it was a 1.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what would you rate the overall rating of the book?
As an overall book when rating all books, I say it's a 3. However, if you take it as a light rom-com billionaire romance, it's a solid 4. Like, I know that's hard to say. It was a 3. Would I read again? No. Did I like it? Yes. If you want a
Yeah.
light, fluffy read to read during your lunch hour, yeah, read this. I thought, like,
Yeah.
I would recommend it.
It's something you could read around others and not blush.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I think I rated a 4. I think that my 4 rating was I passing time, which could be a 3, it could be enjoyable, but I'm, like, passing time, where this, I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the sarcasm, and it felt very movie-like, so I'm giving it a 4.
Yeah. If you take it for what it is, like a light rom-com billionaire,
For
I
sure.
really love their mental banter. Like, not I don't wanna say mental banter, but their internal dialogue, I guess is the right way of saying it, um,
Yes.
that they had, like, they were each funny in their own way, and I
Yes.
really loved that. And
I did too.
I really like Lucius. Like, I thought I just wish I think I was giving it a 3 because I just wanted more of him.
Yeah. For sure, for
I want to
sure.
know more, but when I think about the type of book it's listed as, yeah, it's definitely listed as like perfection, and I would say it's a 4. So,
Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in, babes. If you loved hanging out with us today, don't forget to check the show notes for all the juicy details and links. Definitely also join our chat on Instagram for exclusive updates and behind the scenes goodies, all on Instagram.
and of course, follow us for more spicy reads, hot takes, and unfiltered fun. Until next time, stay morally gray.
Bye.